Firecrackers, and we want to talk about reality of food insecurity and acceptance of genetically modified organisms, popularly known as GMO. And now we have joining us live from Lagos, Professor Oludiro Akinleye. He's an economist. He's also the HOD Economics Department, Unilag. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Yeah, good evening. How are you?
Okay, all right. Now, quickly on to the topic that we have at hand. We just had a report of the Nigerian senators making it known that food insecurity is really something that is big and something that should be taken seriously. But could you help paint a picture of how serious this food insecurity is? Because the interesting thing was, as at last year, we have United Nations having a prediction that Nigeria, one of the countries in Africa and some other countries in Africa, would be experiencing food insecurity. And now that's a reality. Could you please help paint a picture of how serious it is? And from your own understanding, is as the government taking enough steps to try to combat this, or there could still be more that they could do?
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Food security is right now is quite dire. May I remind you that between last year and this year, there have been quite a number of shocks. The first of this, of course, was the removal of the fuel subsidy, which means that in most instances, the cost of transport has practically doubled in a lot of places, or at the very least increased by 50%. Now, when you factor that into the long distances that some of the food that we consume has to travel before it gets to us, it moves from the farm gate to the local market, from the local market to the central market, where it is aggregated before it's brought usually from the north down to the south. So that's a lot of costs that have been added to the cost of food. There also is the Forex crisis, which means that we've seen the cost of the most used foreign currency, dollar, practically quadrupling or at the least doubling over the course of the last year. That has to do with imported food items. May I also remind you that early last year, there was this demonetization policy by the central bank, which meant that at a time when most farmers were supposed to be going to the farm to, put out the crops for the year, which is what we're still eating till now, they did not have access to the funds to farm. And so all of these have culminated into the current situation. The private sector, so by and large, has adjusted wages to meet up with the realities. Business people also have, but for the many people in the states, especially that are civil servant dependent, the public sector wages are yet to catch up with the cost of living crisis. And so for many persons, it is something that is right in your face, and it's quite dire, to be honest.
Response to it so far, would you say that they've done they've done fairly well in their response, or something that they could work on to be better?
Okay, well, when you have this conversation, you do realize that most of these problems we face are assessed in the short term. So where, you have an income, say 30 or 50,000 naira, what you can buy is what your 50,000 can buy. You are unable to defer your consumption until a later date. And so a lot of what the government has done, certain governors, actually, the federal government has done quite a number. Recently, they even said, oh, they will allow some foods to come into the country, import duty free. Some state governors have also done a lot, but all of these are not going to be visible until sometime from the end of August. I've not confirmed the data. I understand that early tomatoes are still coming out and some of the prices are still coming down. But, you cannot assess this. I mean, you go to markets in March, the prices will not come down immediately until a new crop of harvest enters the market. And to also be fair to the government, this is actually a seasonal thing. Between February, March, and July, the cost of food items always does go up. But what's just exacerbated it this time is the relatively higher price. But I'm sure that sometime by the end of this month, definitely into September, we will see a considerable drop in food inflation. I think the last data that came out actually showed that 14 out of 36 states had a reduction in food inflation month on month. So going forward, it will get better. It will get better rather than worse.
Sincerely, we are all looking forward to that. And now to talk about the acceptance of genetically modified organisms, GMO. We're supposed to be joined by Professor Ishaq Mohammed. He is a professor of plant breeding and an expert when it comes to GMO, but sadly he is unable to join us due to some personal things that he is handling. But this will not stop us from still talking about the genetically modified organism, GMO. But instead of going into the science of it, we'll now be looking at the economic side of it. You know that a lot of Nigerians are skeptical about accepting GMO, especially with one of these maize that is about to storm the Nigerian market. But now let us look at it. It has been promised to have ×2 or even more of what our normal corn yield is supposed to be, and is supposed to be resistant to some types of diseases that usually affect crops. So do you think that Nigerians should be welcoming of the idea of this, and what do we stand to benefit from it, that is economically?
Okay, well, first off, a personal confession. I'm a scienceophile, I'm a science person, so I generally believe the word of scientists over that of conspiracy theorists. So apologies for those who will be disappointed. But just suffice to say that, science has very exacting standards, very, very high standards. Is it probable that something harmful may come out of it? Yes, I mean, with every other thing, but come on, we drink Coke every day. We take a lot of harmful decisions on a day-by-day basis. Even paracetamol is said to have side effects. So it's possible. Now, to go to the meat of the issue, generally, what we call genetically modified organisms is principally you using existing varieties or genomes of crops to breed out the undesirable elements and then to strengthen the elements that you want. We could look at maybe a case like oranges, watermelons. We love the juice in it. We maybe love the, is it the rind? I can't remember the other name is called, but we don't like the seeds. So what then happens is you breed it to remove the number of seeds that will come out and then to increase the juice or the water in it. It's rebreeding, it's genetically modified. Does it mean it's engineered to kill people? No, it's not engineered to kill people. It's like you having a certain animal, a goat, that gives birth maybe to 3 baby goats or something, or 2, and then you give it to the over time, mates the female, it brings out.
Oh, all right. It seems
so
like
that's by and large what. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go on.
Okay, all right. So that's basically breeding. And then in this case, I mean, where a lot of people are talking about hunger in the land and all of that, I'm not sure. Yes, of course, if you are not predisposed towards it, I think the major issue is it should be labeled. I mean, there already is a market for organic product consumers, who don't want any chemical, herbicide, and all of that in their crop, and they pay premium value for it. Obviously, if you're going to have GMO that will give you greater yield than the traditional varieties, they need not be as expensive as the other one. So once people have that choice, I don't think there's a problem. The issue that advocates have issues with is just the problem, which I think Nigeria GMOs get.
Oh, sadly, it seems like the network is not necessarily friendly at this moment. So now I feel like it's time for me to introduce my studio guest. I have with me Temitope Odetola, who is an agri expert and also a farmer. Good evening and thank you so much for joining us on Firecrackers.
Thank you for I'm happy to be here.
Okay, all right. And so the discussion we are having, we're talking about realities of food insecurity and acceptance of GMO. You see, some of the rumors that has been flying around about this genetically modified organism is that if you plant it in your farm, they said that nothing else is going to grow on that farm, and then you cannot even plant the seed again. Although when I spoke to some of the scientists that are doing this research, they promised that they've carried out extensive tests on it and this is not possible. So for you who are actually the one who till the soil and is on the farmland, do you think that Nigerians should be welcoming to this GMO, or it's probably something that we should flee from?
Okay. I will not say per se that we should welcome the GMO products that has been, introduced to Nigeria. The GMO has been existent for a while, and the discussion has been on, for some times in the online media, and that not even this regime that the West have been pushing to advise the Nigerian government to see how they can bring the GMO into our country to meet up with the demand of the populace, and just that the failure of the side of the government, because we know that every daily basis the population keep increasing, and if we look at this, the essence of the genetically modified product is to meet up with the demand of the people, the food demand. So, but without even looking at the health implication, that are attached to it, because I know anything that being fast tracked, being producing, and the yield is very bogus, and that it has implication on the health system. And with all the research being done, that whether if you accept the GMO, plant in your farm, you won't be able to. Well, I want to concur with that, but not 100%. But I, as a farmer that believe in the good variety of
organic farming.
Yes, organic farm, not 100% organic, but with the population, we need to see how we can meet up with the demand and hearing of the people. So, and the food is one of the important things in health that we need. Is seconds demand comes irrespective of the type of the food that attached to it. So to me, as a person, I will not 100% welcome it. I'm not in support 100%. Instead of accepting the GMO product, we have alternative to meet up with the demand of Nigeria, so even Africa. So we just need to plan and see how we can produce enough for ourselves. We've been talking. I think they need to, instead of accepting or implementing the GMO idea in our country, we should look other way and see how we can produce for our people.
Okay, alright, but do you think that the reason a lot of people are not accepting it is because humans largely are stubborn to change? Because if we are to look back in history, there was a time that a lot of farmers were not accepting of fertilizers, but now we have lots of farmers that are trying their best to get fertilizers that are subsidized by the government. So do you think that probably in few months or years to come, we could have better acceptance of GMO, probably if all fears that is associated with it have been cleared? Because we also had that same fear when fertilizers too were introduced to farmers in Nigeria.
Well, I will accept fertilizer than accepting a GMO product, because the way the fertilizer work, is different a little than GMO, and the implication on the woman is far different. For a while, for over a decade, we've been applying fertilizer in all our farm product, and it has been giving us results, because it's yearly production, yearly things that we do, and automatically when you keep using the same soil, the same location for particular crop or particular plant, automatically the nutrients on the soil is going to reduce. So what we need to do is to use the fertilizer in boosting the nutrients of that soil and to help the yield of the plants that you have on that particular farm location to make it, have a very good yield harvesting. So instead of accepting a GMO, I would rather advise the Nigerian government, the Nigerian people should, do more of using a fertilizer to produce more food for the need of Nigeria than accepting GMO products because of that, implication, the deadly health hazard that attached to result of that GMO.
Okay, but if we are also to look at it from that angle, some people too have argued that using fertilizers to plant crop has long implications on human health, because this is also something you put in the soil to quicken the growth of your produce, to also make it yield significantly, that you would not have gotten that result if you had not done that ordinarily. And there are also researches and studies that go out to that comes to say that this also has health hazard on human body, but we still have farmers that are still using fertilizers. So do you not think that perhaps, since it is still the same, working on something to give you more results, because we really are battling food insecurity in Nigeria, so do you not feel like that same thing could actually apply to these genetically modified organisms? It is also designed to also give us more yield and probably make things make prices of food reduce in the market and make Nigeria to export this, so that we might earn some foreign exchange that will further stabilize our economy.
Accepting GMO will never make the price of the food to crash. Let us mark that. What we need is, we have the large population in Nigeria, and when we have such a population, is to show that we need more food produce to be monthly, weekly and yearly harvesting, and to meet up with the demand, because food consumption is every seconds, and we've been using fertilizer, and fertilizer has been giving us some support, and not up to that level that we expect to get to, but we are still pushing and we are getting there. Rather than going to the GMO, see, when you're talking about the chemical composition, the level of the chemical is higher. When you are using 0.5, in mixing up for your plant, compared to when you'll be using 10 point something, you can see the percentage, the high. So in the rate of the using of the fertilizer, it's like 0.5 chemical rate, now compared to something that is like 10% or 10 up to 10, the level. So you can see the difference and the damages that is going to cost in the woman system, and most especially in Nigeria. And the people that are introducing this genetically modified organism, I'm not sure 100% that they like Africa to talk about Nigeria.
So you also subscribe to the population reduction controversy?
Well, yes, I think it's similar to that, because that is the angle I'm looking at it. And in the past, we know we are growing, and the population keep increasing daily, and we have been meeting up with the government trying to advise that, we want to reduce the importation, want to reduce, it's a very good idea to do. But before doing that, we need to put some plan in place to meet up with the demand, because we are saying we want to reduce the importation and we don't want to accept it, the GMO, and the other aspects that needed to be used to meet up with the demand of the people, they are not being put in place. We are just joking. So rather than the West that are pushing this device to us to use, they will just be looking at us that we are a fool, that we don't know.
But the interesting thing about this GMO, especially the one of the maize, it is actually done in Nigeria. The research, the the experiment and everything, it is done here in Nigeria. It's not something that is being brought in from another country.
Yes.
We have scientists that are working on it in Nigeria.
I agree, 100%. There is no a agricultural student going to school that is not a scientist, and we've been taught how to mix all these things together in different aspects of agriculture. Or let me just use agriculture as a whole, whether livestock, whether aquaculture, whether planting or whatever. The level of it, I agree that the scientists did the research here, but I'm telling you, they did their own research in their own field to meet up. Oh, they've done their work. This is what they can do to meet up with this. But the other side of it, which is the hazard, they are not how to push that. And the people in the medical line know that the food. They say health is wealth. If it's what you consume in your system that result to how you are going to be moving around in the society, how you are going to be behaving. So if you consume a very good product without its lesser chemical, I believe we have lesser people in the hospital.
But if the biosafety have already accepted this, does it not mean that Nigerians could put their mind at rest that everything is going to be fine? If it has already gotten biosafety approval.
Well, he may skip through that, that stage of the safety, but to me, as a person, as a person, and as a farmer that been in the system, where I know how our father has been doing in the past, and I agree that the population was less then, but now the population has gone higher, which is by next month, by next year, the population will also increase, which is 100% acceptable. But to me, I don't think all the composition of things just being coming up with this GMO is going to help our population, is going to help Nigerian, and it's going to help Africa. Rather than accepting the GMO, we have alternative. We have different alternatives that can be used in meeting up with the demand of Nigeria.
Okay, alright. Let's get Professor Akileye's view on it, because my guest here in the studio is of the opinion that GMO introduction will not necessarily crash prices of food in the market. What is your thoughts on that?
All right, thank you. Recall I did start earlier that I'm really not into conspiracy theories. The truth of the matter is that the yield of our local crops, our local varieties, is very, very poor. For every hectare that you put our crops on, you compare with what obtains outside Nigeria, our farmers are faring very poorly. Now, you put that up against the backdrop of the fact that many people are not necessarily staying in villages. So our population is increasing, but we're having climate change, we're having urbanization, and then you're having youth migration. So if we don't do something real fast to improve the yield of what we put on the farm, we're in a very, very unfortunate situation. And if I may bring to the attention of the other person, the person in the studio, I'd like to remind him that, much of what we even call the advances in agriculture today is attributable to the Green Revolution. And it also faced these issues of, why are they giving us this kind of seeds? The fertilizers we take for granted today were gotten out because people said they were synthetic. But how much agriculture is done today without fertilizers? For me, I still insist it's an option for the Nigerian market. What can be done is labeling. So if you want to take, something that's cheaper and more abundant, you should know it is genetically modified. That's all. If you want the one that's not genetically modified, it's going to be more expensive. It's the same thing. We already have that kind of classification for organic food. So if you want to buy maybe a kilo for 10,000 naira and it's organic, please pay your money. But if you want, inorganic or one that they use chemicals and fertilizers for, and it's 4,000 naira, go ahead and get it. So on that level, I disagree. Like I did tell you, science is usually right, not always, but it's usually right. And this issue of birth control and all of that, I really don't put much stock in it. My apologies, please.
All right, thank you very much for that.